But now I have the honor and pleasure of introducing tonight's very special keynote speaker. We are so thrilled to have Mr. Tim Shriver with us this evening. Yes. I'm going to read a couple of things. Let me share with you just a few of Tim's commitment and also his biography. Tim Shriver leads the International Board of Directors and serves together with 6 million Special Olympics athletes in 200 countries to promote health, education, and a more unified world through the joy of sports. Shriver joined Special Olympics in 1996. He is a leading educator who focuses on the social and emotional factors in learning. He co-founded and currently chairs the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which is the leading school reform organization in the field of social and emotional learning. He is a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, co-chairman of the National Commission on Social and Emotional Learning, president of the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation, and this is my favorite. He is co-founder of Love and Scoopville Ice Cream Company. His greatest achievement yet, right? Shriver earned his undergraduate degree from Yale University, a master's degree from Catholic University, and a doctorate in education from the University of Connecticut. He has produced 4 films, is the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Fully Alive, Discovering What Matters Most, and has written for dozens of newspapers and magazines. And he's been awarded with degrees and honors, which he happily accepted on behalf of others. Mr. Shriver and his wife, Linda Potter, reside in the Washington, D.C. area and have 5 adult children. Toledo area, give it up for Mr. Tim Shriver.
Wow. Let's give it up for Rhonda Sue. I mean, you could just take that act on the road. Not just because she was so nice to me, but all that energy and enthusiasm and creativity. I'm so grateful, Rhonda, to you for being here tonight. And I will say, they said there's just going to be this short little history video. I mean, you guys have already had the main event. That video, that film was really beautiful. Your narration, which is not easy to do, by the way. I don't know if any of you are in film or video production, but to carry that message with such power and empathy and strength at the same time was really quite beautiful. I want to just join in thanking all of you, the people on the board, the team at Sunshine, all of the folks who made tonight possible. You know, when we talked earlier a couple months ago, and there was this goal of getting 400 people here tonight, and it's like 550 people. You had to bar the doors. I know it had nothing to do with the fact that tonight was free, right? What's the sign language for giving? How do you say? Oh, giving? Can everybody try this with me? Just getting you in practice. It's not my job to raise money, but we did get good red velvet. We got good chocolate. Rhonda got 2 pieces of red velvet. She didn't confide that in everybody, but I hope tonight, if nothing else, will remind everybody in this room to be as generous as you can be, with whatever means and support you've got. I just feel a sort of an overwhelming sense of gratitude myself being here tonight. To each and every one of you. We started with a prayer that said, we give thanks. And that certainly is a great part of what I think this has been all about, what all of you, in some ways, maybe as someone who came to Toledo. What's the slogan in Toledo? I'm going to do better here. Is that how it goes? I'll do better. So this is going to be, I'll do better here tonight because of you, but maybe I can bring a message from the outside that this community, this state, this country wants to give thanks to you. And I don't know if you feel that, if you can sense it really deep down, that your presence here and your participation in this community is something that the rest of the world wants to thank you for. just as you thank the staff and the families and all those who work so hard. I hope that comes through. In my upbringing, we were told to give thanks in large part because my mom was involved in the founding of the Special Olympics movement. So this is one scene from that movement. This is the opening ceremonies of the Special Olympics World Games in 1995, so a long time ago. But the scene there is at the Yale Bowl, and down on the field there were about 6,000 people with intellectual challenges from 135 countries, and they'd all been given cameras, single-use cameras. Does anybody remember? Doesn't have a plug-in for your phone, none of that, just a camera. And the president came, it's the only time the president of the United States has ever come to a Special Olympics World Summer Games, and Bill Clinton came, but for security reasons, when he went to give his speech, you can see him in the Jumbotron, maybe it's small, but you can maybe catch. He gave the speech from the top of the stadium. They wouldn't let the president go down on the field and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so down on the field, you've got 6,000 athletes. They've all got cameras. They're getting pictures of each other, and one of the professional photographers looks over and sees a group of athletes over here, doesn't know where they're from, but sees they're all getting pictures of Clinton while he's speaking, and he's way up at the top of the stadium, and he sees they've all got their cameras up and they're all backwards. And he realizes the athletes have never used a camera before, so he goes over not knowing if they speak English or not and says, "You're trying to get a picture of the president," and the athlete says, and he says, "You have to turn it around, and you push the button," and the athlete says, "Oh, thank you." He says, "But if you turn it backwards and look through the viewfinder, it works like binoculars and you can see the president perfectly clearly." We get each other wrong a lot. We see through a distorted lens. Photographer's a good guy. All of us in the room, most of you, I dare say, all of you, good-hearted, generous, smart people. Me, I hope, try, work, pray to do better. But I get people wrong. You know, the lens is distorted. And when you get people wrong, you sell people short. And when you sell people short, you often treat them with contempt. I have a sort of a different version of this. I wrote this book, and don't worry, I'm not selling it. You don't have to buy it. Don't worry about any of that. But when it came out, I went to give talks where you could get people to listen. I was in a hotel and got in the elevator to go up to the mezzanine where the function room was, and there's a guy in there with a 10-gallon hat and cowboy boots and a big, huge silver belt buckle and blue jeans. I'm just going one floor up, and he leans over and he says, "Anyone ever tell you you look like a Kennedy?" And I was like, all focused on my thing, so I wasn't really paying attention. I said, yeah, I've heard that before. And the door opens up, and he says, "That must really piss you off, doesn't it?" You don't have to laugh that hard. But here's the thing. It's part of what we do. We judge books by their covers. We come up with a label. I mean, there's no ill will there. I mean, maybe a little ill will, but the point I want to invite us to think about a little bit here is the way in which this distortion, this distorting lens, this judging books by their covers, leads us down roads that aren't where we want to go. That take us in directions we don't want to end up in. So, you've seen pictures, and I'm going to share a few more about my family story because I'm very grateful to be back here in a place that so affectionately and generously remembers my mother. This is a picture of my mom's family, her 8 brothers and sisters, and her parents. And this is when they were all together on their way in the late 1930s. At this time, my grandfather had been named the ambassador to the Court of St. James, which was a big honor. He was Irish and very Irish-American. I know there's Mennonites here everywhere, but we had a little Catholic blood, I'm not going to lie. But anyway, he was kind of excited about this, and there was a certain point at which people, by the way, I just got given this pointer. Look at that, it works. I've never used it before. Don't worry, I won't point at you. So she's over there, for those of you that can see. She's at the end. I could have just said she's on the end. Most people, when they see this photograph, they'll point out and say, well, where is the president? So he's standing next to my mom. He's the second from the left. And then they'll say, well, where's Robert F. Kennedy? And he's down, I can't even see him now. He's a little, slightly shorter, a little closer there. And then where's Teddy Kennedy? He's the little fellow in the middle, right there with his dad. And they'll think this is the story of this family that got into politics. Don't worry, it's not about Democrats or Republicans. I have no interest in that dimension of this story. But what I do have an interest in is the fact that almost no one knows that next to the president is Rosemary Kennedy, who was born with an intellectual disability, and who was raised by the choice of her parents. We've heard such beautiful stories about the Englers. But not unlike the Englers, my grandparents, Rosemary was born in 1918. And in 1918, what I was told over and over again is that my grandmother would call and write and ask and beg and, is there a doctor? Is there a teacher? Is there a mentor? Is there a medication? Nothing. And what there was what you just saw in the film, was stories like this where the Englers said, not for my child, and not for any child. Because why? This was the institutionalization of getting each other wrong, selling each other short, and thereby treating people with contempt. Right? All those people, all those human beings had done nothing wrong. They were just deemed too different to belong, too different to matter, too different to have value, because they were judged by one dimension of their lives and experience. Not by the totality of who they were, what they offered the world, but by one dimension. How fast can you read? How much math can you do? Sorry, you don't belong. We're putting you out. And this quote, horrible as it is, from Oliver Wendell Holmes, the United States Supreme Court, we try to respect our institutions, but they make mistakes. And this was the decision of, my Aunt Rosemary would have been 8 years old when that decision was handed down, authorizing the forced sterilization of women across this country in institutions because of their intellectual disability. No other reason. But here's my mom, just like the Haskells, just like the picture you've seen, like the Englers, the pictures you've seen. She grew up with Rosemary, and here's what happens to people like most of us in this room. We see the way the culture makes decisions. We see the truth of what people need and deserve and have to offer, and we know the culture's wrong. We don't think it. We don't have to read a book about it. My mother didn't have to go to a laboratory or consult a physician from the University of Michigan or the Ohio State University. She knew the culture was wrong because she knew her sister had value, because she knew her sister was fun, that she knew her sister loved to play games. She knew her sister loved her brothers and her sisters. She knew her brothers and her sisters grew and were better because of Rosemary. So it didn't take an academic lesson to teach any, I dare say, of you in this room that this was a place to come. Why? Because we have to be here to prove to the culture that the culture has to get this right. Why? Because we know it. We know the residents, we know the workers, we know the sons and daughters of the Sunshine tradition. We know they deserve it. And we're not going to stop. The reason you're here is you are not going to tolerate people saying to you, no, they don't. It's not acceptable, right? So that's my mom. And so by the time, this is 1962. And what did she hear when she moved to Washington? Her brother was president of the United States. So I grew up there. I was born a little before then, but I'm not going to get into the dates. But what she heard over and over again from the mothers, the same thing the English heard, it's nothing for my kid. She said, you know what, this summer there is something for your child. You bring your child to my house. And I'm going to have a summer camp, and your children will come here. They'll learn to swim. They'll get pony rides. They'll play kickball. They'll do arts and crafts. They will get out and have the same opportunity as everybody else. And my mother, God bless her, wasn't the person to administer it or write a check for it. She was in the pool. She wanted to be in the action because she wanted to prove to people what she already knew. These kids can swim. Of course they can. I know it. I saw my sister Rosemary swim every summer. So she was there, and you know, here's the alternative. It's dignity. It's treating people with dignity. This was the beginning, and she started this camp for about 80 or 90 people with children and adults, young adults with intellectual challenges. But the key workers there were what? I guess, you know, you'd think, well, maybe you'd go down to the PT training people, or maybe you'd go down to the Georgetown Medical School, or maybe, no, she went to high schools and says, I want teenagers to come in here. Why? Because they need to learn too. And those 15 and 16 and 17-year-old counselors were all people who were part of the experiment of the transformation. For the athletes or campers, they deserved opportunity. For the teenagers, they deserved the chance to learn how to see. See more clearly, see more accurately, see the potential, see the gift, see the capacity. So these, you know, I've got hundreds of these pictures, but of course I'm going to shift to these ones because I'm so proud my mom was here. Probably 6 or 7 months after that picture in the pool was taken. I'm guessing this was not during the summer, although maybe it was in '63. But she came here because the promise was here. The promise was being lived here, just like she was trying to live it in her backyard, just like she was asking her brother to change the institutions of policy and politics, to create an institution at the National Institutes of Health that looked at children and women for the first time, which is now, I'm very proud to say, named for my mother. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development was renamed the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development because she was working the aisles of power and she was working the pool at the same time. And she was looking around for the models, and where she found a model was right here. She found a kindred spirit in the people who are creating the spirit and the energy of this extraordinary institution. And you know, we talk about the promise to progress, and I know we've just seen Haskell in the picture, and maybe people say, well, my gosh, the guy is kind of old, and it looks like he's you know, not able, you know, up to coming out on a night like tonight. Yeah, but so what? Think of that life. Think of the life of this man. How many lives he's changed. Who in this room wouldn't say at the end of your life, if you'd made this much of a difference, you'd lived a good life? This man has lived a good life. This man has contributed to changing his country. You know, he didn't give a speech, he didn't write a book, he didn't make a movie, he didn't get to be senior vice president at his firm, he didn't sell a company, he didn't have children. Many of the things we think we need to do in order to matter, he didn't do. But he has led a powerfully good life and continues to do so. We've got to flip the lens, if you will, in some ways, I hope to say. Here's a, you know, I want to not leave you, I'm not done yet, I'm sorry to say. But I want you to see, you know, my mom's vision was to create this movement we call Special Olympics, and you heard some of the numbers. Almost 6 million people, with and without intellectual challenges. Right here, I gathered this week in Toledo, there was at the high schools. We're now, the biggest area of growth in the Special Olympics movement is unified sports in schools. So my hope is, you know, when I was a kid, a lot of high schools didn't have girls' teams. And my daughters say to me, how is that possible? Were you alive when that happened? Man, what were you thinking? I was like, I was a kid. But we wouldn't, I mean, nobody would even dream of the idea that you wouldn't have sports for boys and girls or young men and young women in schools. But someday, I hope that every school that has a boys' basketball team and a girls' basketball team also has a Special Olympics unified basketball team. So that all those kids in the school, they can look up to the kid who's 6'8" and going to a D3 college, and they can look up to the woman who's 6'1" and about to be in the WNBA in a year or two, and they can look up to the guy who's 4'11" and who's playing point guard on the unified team, and the cheers will be just as loud for him when the pep rally takes place in that high school. So And the reason the cheers will be just as loud, in my view, is because they know what a jar, this is a jar of Scylla. A picture taken after her race at a Special Olympics World Games. And I invite you sometimes I'll bring our staff and we'll do staff meetings, and sometimes I bring I have a poster size of a jar in my office. Sometimes I just bring the poster to the staff meeting and just say, everybody just gets 2 minutes, 3 minutes just to spend time with her. Silence. Because for me, this woman, this young woman, you see what place she came in? How many people have a picture of themselves at home coming in 7th? No, you're not brave enough. I'm not brave enough. I send a picture out to my wife or my kids when I came in first, or if I was second in a big group, at least I came in second. 7th, they say, how did the race go? Not a Jara. She's not trying to impress me or you. She did her best. She doesn't need your approval for it. She doesn't need a number. She's a free woman. That's a free woman. I know she's young, but I look at that picture and I think to myself, someday I want to have the guts and the bravery of a jar of Scylla. Someday, if I spend enough time working at it, praying on it, and trying to shape my inner life so that I can have that kind of bravery, I'll be as free as her. We're at a time, I dare say, when these examples, the Haskells and the Ajaras of the world, are not just examples of people we want to give great service to. We're living in a time that, just bear with me for 3 minutes here. This is not about politics, about one party or the other. It's about politics as us. I don't care anybody's party affiliation. I don't care who you vote for, what color hats you wear. It makes no difference to me in this context. What matters to me is that our country has become ill with misjudgment and contempt, not because of this policy issue or that. I'm not even going to name them. We're not that far apart on policy issues, believe it or not. All the polling suggests this. Where we are really far apart in how we treat each other. We have an epidemic, this is Arthur Brooks, a conservative writer and scholar, saying we have an epidemic of contempt in this country. And I bring this up because when we looked at those pictures in the film of the epidemic of contempt that confronted people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, that contempt brought us to prison-like conditions where people were excluded from each other, separated from their families for life. Today, 30% of us have broken off a relationship with our families and our friends over politics or culture. That would mean that about this many people in the room have ended, don't talk to their uncle, don't talk to their grandparent, don't talk to their cousin, not welcome at Thanksgiving. They shouldn't come to the funeral, the wedding, the bar mitzvah, the baptism. That's us today. Same pattern, reinforcing itself. And I'm not going to, that's too much. This is last week, 2 weeks ago data. We're more divided than ever. Torn apart by partisan media, torn apart by the algorithm, torn apart by politics who use division as a way of advancing their careers. We know this story, I don't have to tell it to you, it's not the night for that. What it is the night for is to remember that the antidote to contempt is not agreement on the issues. Democracy was not set up so that everybody would agree. Democracy was set up so that we would have ways to disagree effectively. Nobody gets too much power in a democracy. Why? So that everybody's voice gets to be heard. Everybody's voice can't get heard if we're hating on each other all the time. Almost half of us self-censor. Don't say what you think because you're afraid. Someone's going to misjudge you at the table. I'm not going to say that. Well, I'm not sure if I should say that. Well, I'm not going to say that if they're here. The censorship machine is not in Washington. It's at our kitchen tables. So the antidote here is dignity. It's the same antidote that the Englers brought to this community. Dignity. Stop misjudging people. So I'm just going to tell you, we built this thing, and it's really fun. If you want to spend time on this, you can. We're not going to spend time on it tonight. This is called the Dignity Index. And the reason I mention it tonight is because what I learned from people with intellectual disabilities is that the closer we get to treating people with dignity, the closer we will get to being able to see people clearly. So we built a scale where you can see where you fit when you talk about the other party, or when you talk about your mother-in-law, or when you talk about your cousin who moved from here to there and now is doing this, or when you talk about those people who live in Chicago, or who go to Penn State. We built this scale to help people be awakened to the idea that when you treat people with contempt, you have an option. You can talk about people like at a 3 level. We're the good people, they're the bad people. When we ask people how they talk about politics, the people on the other party, whatever the other party is, doesn't matter. Most people say, I'm a 3. My party's the good people. Most people are the bad people. Just saying. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it, but that's the way it is. Some people drop down to a 2. They're evil. This country, we got to get rid of them. And some people drop down to a 1, which is what happens when you get violent. We got to destroy them. And all we're saying is, if you followed Haskell, you would treat people at the 7 or the 8 all the time. But you don't think, the country doesn't think Haskell's there to be followed. Everybody thinks he's there to be helped. What about actually modeling ourselves on Haskell? What about looking at Haskell and saying, how could I be more like him? As opposed to more like, pick your politician that you like. I'm not gonna. So anyway, I just show you this because we're trying to pull the lessons of the Sunshine communities out into the rest of the world. This is my main point. David Brooks writes this just 6 months ago. He published a book, the journalist David Brooks. See what he says. The whole book is about how to see other people, how to actually understand people. And most people have to read this book to understand their spouse, not necessarily people from the other political party. But his point here is that this awareness of the infinite dignity of each person is the precondition for being able to see them well. Same message as this community offers this state and this country. Same message. Somebody comes knocking on your door. I need a job. I need a place to live. I need support for medical help. What do you have to do to see them? You have to see them with dignity. You have to say to them, you are welcome here. We will value you here. We will find what you want and need, and we will make sure you get it because you are a person who deserves to be treated with dignity. That's it. That's what the country needs now. My point here is we've got to get to... Stop. Good. That's good. We have to get to the point where the work we're doing for people with intellectual challenges also becomes work we're bringing from them as a leaven to the rest of the country. When people ask you what you heard or learned or saw here tonight, I hope you will tell them, I saw in the history of the Sunshine communities a story of resilience and revolution that our country needs. Compassion, caring, and dignity for everyone, no exception. So, either this video is not working or I'm out of time and I'm being gonged. Am I being gonged? You can tell me. Oh, so we'll watch this short video because young people get this. Young people understand what the country needs.
Penguin? Patriots. Patriots, there we go. Yeah. Jason loves sports. Yeah. Jay loves the Patriots. Who do you like? Gronk? Say it. Gronk. Gronk. Everyone's curious, like living with a person with like disabilities, like how daily life is, and I say, I don't know, just normal.
You're good? All right, have a good day. All right? Be a good boy, right?
I am.
I know you are.
It's like a normal brother relationship. We fight a lot, and we also have great moments together. It's great. It's life.
You know, I think that when you talk about Evan and Jay, you talk about, you know, they're really one person here. It's not Evan, it's not Jay, it's Evan and Jay.
Jay's just like a big ball of joy.
A student who typically you wouldn't hear much communication from, but when you do hear it from him, you feel it. He greets you in the morning when you walk in. He wants to get up and make sure everybody's smiling and having a good time. So he may go by you, tap you on the shoulder, he may make a silly face.
Who's on your basketball team?
Evan.
Evan. Who's he again? My brother?
I'm a brother.
My brother.
Evan and Jay are instrumental in our inclusion movement. Evan Hallberg alone is the dream for a teacher.
Programs like TOPS, Special Olympics, and most recently Unified Sports have provided a foundation for individuals of all abilities to express themselves and succeed in society.
You don't really know until you're up there, and that your heart's pounding knowing that you have to like give this 1.5-page long speech in front of everyone.
I know that when I graduate from high school, I will miss the times I've spent with my brother. Even the little things, like car rides to school, with the radio booming and him dancing in the back seat.
I started like sobbing a little bit, and then Jay put his arm around me, and then after that I knew I was kind of like done. But I remember that I'm talking in front of the entire school and I'm on TV, so I had to keep going. Making a contribution to a huge movement is the biggest thing anyone can really do. It feels humbling.
For this is why I choose to include. Thank you.
I'm gonna cry. Through sports like Unified, I can trust everyone to protect my brother because they know that he's no different than anyone else. Brings like no greater joy. Yeah.
Young people know and want a country like this. Which of these words doesn't apply to you in this room tonight? I love making a contribution. These are the words of Jay, of Evan. I love making a contribution. It feels humbling. I'm gonna cry. I want to trust everyone to protect my brother and sister. It's almost like he was speaking to us tonight, 75 years. I want to be in a community where I can trust everyone to protect my brother and my sister. Right? These kids at this high school, and there's, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of kids just like them all over the country. They wrote this pledge, and we adopted it as for the entire Special Olympics movement around the world. We translated this pledge into Chinese and Hindi and Swahili and Spanish and French and Portuguese and Russian, you name it. And you see at the bottom, we talk about, and I put here at the top, this community is going from a charity to a pillar institution, not for people with intellectual disabilities, but from them for the rest of the community. This community is stronger because this pillar institution exists not just for the people who live and work at it, but for the rest of the community to learn from it. And if you think of these words that these young people wrote themselves, by the way, not with their teachers, that I promise, I pledge to go look for, not to accept, not to tolerate, not to endure, not to force myself to listen to those people. I go to look for them. We get better and better when we listen more deeply to each other. And Haskell and all of the many people in your community are icons of this message. It is at 75, I dare say, our chance not just to say thank you to all of you in this room and all those behind us who have built this particular revolutionary movement, but also to challenge the rest of the country now to pay attention, to learn from this, and to change this culture that is so divisive and so destructive, and replace it with a culture of dignity that is modeled by these young people and by each of you. Thank you very much for having me tonight and for all you've done.